concept of DNIS routing is very useful for creating a contact flow that can be reused, reconfigures itself based on the telephone number that was called. We use that telephone number to look up information in a database and bring back the required variables to completely define your contact center contact flow. So as explained in the blog, we have a basic DNIS configuration. In fact, if we go to phone numbers, we'll see that all of the phone numbers typically come in. Got a number here that comes in, and it goes to this contact flow called DNIS configuration. And in this configuration, what we're going to do is do some basic setup. So first we're going to turn on logging, going to set the recording behavior, set the voice, and then we're going to invoke a lambda function. This lambda function will go out to the database and pull back. In this case, I only want to pull back based on the dialed number. So that's a system parameter. So we're going to use the dialed number. You have options here. You could have used the customer's number, for example, and we could look things up based on the caller ID, but in this case we're going to use the number that the caller dialed. And we're going to assign that to a key in the database, which cleverly I named DNIS. You can call it anything you want. And the way the function works is we have to tell it which values we want to bring back. So I want the flow ID and the QID and the extension number. Excuse me. I use the extension number because different queues will have different voicemail boxes, and I use the extension number to make sure that if the caller decides to leave a message, we put it in the right extension number. So that's going to change for each call based on the number dialed. So this is how you set that up. You're going to select the function here. I'll provide the function in the package. And then we continue along. We pull the information back here, and then rather than just keep it as an external value, there's nothing wrong with that. You can reference the external attribute anytime you want, but I want this information to be assigned to a user-defined variable. So I'm taking the external flow ID that we got from the database, and I'm assigning it to a variable called flow ID. Likewise, I'm doing this with the extension number and with the QID. And I'll show you some of that. Now we could pull back anything we want. For example, mean greeting. We could pull back IVR options. There's no limit to what we could pull back. In this simple example, I'm just going to pull back an extension number. I'm going to pull back the queue. So when someone calls this phone number, we know that they're calling the ABC company rather than the CBS company, or they're calling Ginzu Knives versus Hilton Reservations. You might have a call center that, here's a better example, an executive suite, right? So I'm an operator in an executive suite. I've got 50 customers. Every time I answer the phone, I need to say, thanks for calling the ABC company. Thanks for calling Hack RF. Thanks for calling Software Defined Radios. That company name I'm pulling back from the database based on the number they dialed using this configuration. You could just go from here right to transfer to flow. Excuse me. Transfer to flow, you'll see, is transferring to a user-defined attribute called flow ID. What is flow ID? Well, we got that out of the database, and it's going to, again, be different for every call. Now, in my particular application, I'm making use of customer profiles, an entirely different subject. You'll find a blog on that if that interests you. And you can take the call flow and modify it to get rid of this piece here. And that's very simply how the contact flow works. Now let's go look at the database. The assumption here is you know how to set up a DynamoDB database. If you don't, give us a call and we'll help you with that. This is actually the function. So back here, when we invoke this function, we're invoking this code here, a copy of which I'm providing. When you paste it in, again, the assumption here is you know how to create a Lambda function. I'm going to provide you the code. You're going to paste it into your Lambda function. Call it anything you want. I call it DrVoIP get DNIS configuration. You'll notice under configuration, under environmental variables, you'll notice that I'm saying that the primary key that we search the database on is the DNIS value. And you also have to say which region you're in. So in this case, I'm in US East 1. And the table name, the function is going to pull data from a DynamoDB table. It needs to know what the table is here. So when you create your function, name it, you're going to create these environmental variables as described here, change them to fit your configuration. Let's look at the DynamoDB table itself. Again, I assume you know how to set up a DynamoDB table. As you can see here, the table is pretty simple. I have a column called DNIS, and as you recall, that is the index. That's you enter this table. If you want to pull back the flow ID, you have to reference that by the DNIS. I also have a practice of sometimes I want to pull data out of here that I might use for different reasons, and I have fake DNIS numbers. And long ago I discovered I used +1 300 999 1000 through 1999. They're fake numbers. They could never be dialed. There is no 300 area code, no 999 1000. So it's just a fake number. Let's go down here and look. Excuse me again. So here's our main number. And if I pop that open, you can see the DNIS, which is the partition key or the index to the table. There's the phone number. So when the call comes in, it hits that contact flow that we just looked at. And that Lambda function takes this number, comes into the table. And as you noticed, I pulled back the extension number, the flow ID, and the QID. So the flow ID is going to be particular to this phone number. I wanted to pull a particular contact flow. I also have a main greeting, so I could have pulled back the main greeting. I have an IVR menu, for example, and I want it to if they press 1, go to customer service, press 2, go to tech support, something like that. And I want to be able to reuse that contact flow, right? I don't want to have to do a save as, or cut and paste and just clutter up the system when I can do one contact flow and reuse it every time. So if you don't know what a flow ID is, let's take a look at this one here. It ends in 681B. So when that call comes in, I'm going to go to look for that contact flow based on the flow ID. If you don't know where that is, any contact flow you have, you go under here, it says show additional flow information. And you'll see here the flow ID. It's these last 32 characters. That's all you need. You don't need the whole thing. Everything else is pretty straightforward. It's the Amazon resource number. It says I'm in US East 1, the account number, blah, blah, blah. So just pull this out. And in this case, I'm sending a contact flow. Where did I say I was sending it? I think I sent it here. No. Which one did I? Let me go back there. I forget which one I sent it to. 681B. And I put that here. 681B. 6818. Let's go to another page. 681B. Transfer to IVR is the name of the contact flow, but the contact flow ID is this number here. But as you can see, I want to transfer that call in here, do additional setup. And as you see here, I've got a IVR menu with these options. But I want to be able to reuse this for each call. I don't want to have to do come up here and do save as, give it a different name, reconfigure it. Then I get all of these contact flows. One will get the job done. What's going to happen here is if I look at the prompt, you'll see here it says option 1, option 2, option 3. And if you, and by the way, the prompt says main greeting prompt, it's external. So there's still the same Lambda function, just went back out here and pulled that back in. Here's the main greeting, and option 1 is going to go to that contact flow, and so forth. And that's all defined, pulled back by the Lambda function. Here it is again, same Lambda function as before. It's just on the first one, I don't need all of this stuff. And in fact, it may not exist, right? If they called the software-defined radio company contact flow or tech support contact flow, it might be handled differently. They're calling the airline reservation number. I need to run it to an IVR that gets more information, as you'll see here. Say press 1, it says set contact attribute to option 1, which I pulled back from the database. So at the end of the day, you'll find that this strategy is very useful. I have another, I either transfer to an IVR or I transfer to queue. Which queue? Let me find it. Where is it? Some stuff here. Okay, transfer to queue. Now, I reuse this contact flow many, many times, right? Keep in mind that we got here because in the database it said, send the flow ID I want you to use for that phone number is this, which happens to be transfer to queue. And you come in here, and we invoke the Lambda function again because we want to get some additional information. But mostly we want to transfer to queue. Now, there's a blog I did that tells you the difference between transferring to flow, transferring to queue. I don't like to transfer to queue. I prefer to transfer to flow because in the transfer to flow, I can do things like, check hours of operation and do, what ifs, check staffing, maybe change voices. Maybe this particular phone number is the Spanish speaking line, so I need to change the languages. And then I will transfer to queue. But I don't want to have the database say transfer to the Spanish queue. I want to transfer to a general purpose queue contact flow that gets its configuration data from the database. So that's a brief description. You're going to have to create a Lambda function, and I'm providing you the Lambda function code. Don't forget to put in the attributes, and you'll create your own database. I'm just giving you an example of, this is named in the Lambda function and the environmental variables of the Lambda function, so don't forget to. And when we explore the table, you can see in this example, I have DNIS, I have sometimes cell phone number, extension number, flow ID. The beauty of DynamoDB is it's unlike SQL. I don't have to have the same record for every, the same columns for every row to oversimplify. Everything, they can all be different. For example, we go back down here to the one we were just looking at. You can see I've got entirely different, but it's all based on the DNIS number. Go ahead and play with this. If you have an issue, open a ticket, and we'll give you some assistance. Don't hesitate to call. That's what we do, build Amazon Connect call centers. I hope you have found this informative, guys, and thanks for viewing.